Hi guys, it is Aoife from Fred We Seated Laughing, and I am here with my favourite books of 2019. So I have 15 books to talk to you about today. I couldn't narrow it down any further. I managed to get it from like 20 to 19 to 15. So I have 15 here to talk about. Some of these I have talked about a lot in different videos throughout the year since I have read them. So I won't go into too much detail here, just to keep this video as short as possible so you aren't here forever. I will leave links down below to either written reviews I've done for these books or my weekly reviews that I have reviewed them in case you did want to know my more in-depth thoughts about these books and what I said about them at the time when I read them as well. I will get straight on into it. So the first book I have here is a sequel, and it is Bloody Rose by Nicholas Eames. This is the sequel to Kings of the Wild, which is his first book in this trilogy. I do believe it's going to be a trilogy. I do think he has another book coming out very soon. And this is basically set in a world where there are monsters, and then there are bands of people who basically get together to fight these monsters. They have all sorts of people in the band, like a swordsman, an archer. They have a bard normally who goes along to see their different feats of courage and bravery, and makes up songs to tell everyone else about it. It's very much rock and roll kind of lifestyle. And the Kings of the Wild, we followed some older men who were once this really good band called Saga, and mercenary band called Saga, and we are following them as they are older, because they want to rescue one of the men's older daughters who is trapped in this castle that is surrounded by a horde of monsters. And in Bloody Rose, we are following that daughter, whose name is Rose, as she goes on an adventure with her own band, and yeah, we are just following this amazing action adventure with a lot of comedy in it. This is everything you want in a fantasy. It has really intriguing characters. In this one in particular, really badass female characters wielding swords and bows and all sorts of things, magic. You have kind of witches. It's really cool. You have all sorts of really cool monsters. This one is actually very interesting as well, because you also have characters who other people maybe in the first book would have been looked upon as monsters, where we are seeing them as their own character, actually as a good person in this book. And so you are seeing kind of different sides of what a monster really is. Who are the real monsters? Is it the creatures that are actually just trying to live and the humans going out and killing them, or are the real monsters in this world actually the humans themselves? And I actually really enjoyed this one. This book has some really great action moments. It has some really heartbreaking moments in it as well, and I absolutely loved it, and I cannot wait for the next book. The next book I want to talk about is The Truths and Triumphs of Grace Atherton by Anstey Harris. This is a really nice contemporary book that really surprised me at the start of this year, when I ended up really falling in love with this book and the characters and the journey the character goes on. In this book we are following Grace Atherton, who is a really accomplished cello and violin maker, but she also plays her own music. But due to experiences she's had in the past, she actually can't play music in front of other people. She can only play it for herself. So instead she is kind of showing her love of music and her love of the cello and the violin by making them. And we follow her very quickly. We find out she is in a relationship with a married man, and through something that happens at the start of the book, things start coming to light about their relationship and the relationship she's been in with this man for quite a long time. She has sacrificed a lot of her life for this man, who isn't in a position to fully commit to her, and we see this man and the relationship completely destroy her. And we see in this book Grace Atherton just completely break down and lose every single part of herself because of this relationship, and we see her have to rebuild that. And I just loved, first of all, I just loved the emphasis on music in this book. I'm not someone who's particularly musically accomplished. I don't listen to a lot of music myself. I listen to a little bit, but I don't listen to a lot. I wouldn't really know a lot about classical music, but this book showed me the love of music and showed me how magical music can be and how wonderful it is to have music in your life. I think if you are really into music, this book could be really perfect for you. As well, just everything with Grace and just the relationship she has with other people and how they help her, it's just so beautiful. And just that build up of confidence that she has, we see her just have no confidence, and we just see that build up of confidence in herself to the end of the book, and it is just so lovely. And it's not a book about her relationship with this other man, it's a book about her relationship with herself, and how sometimes you have to forgive yourself for your past mistakes, and you have to really have to self-care. You have to apologise to yourself, and you have to get over some things, and it's a real journey. And this is just such a beautiful book, and I just really enjoyed it, and I definitely recommend it for people who are just looking for a contemporary novel with a lot of meaning. I really enjoyed it, and I think other people will too. I have 2 books from the Expanse series on this list, 2 of them that I read this year. The first one is Nemesis Games, which is the 5th book in the series, and Tiamat's Wrath, which is the 8th book and the latest book to come out, is also on this list. Both these books are the 2 books in this series that I both gave 5 stars to. Obviously, I read both of them this year. Nemesis Games, I think the reason I like this one is because it follows a character who we've seen a lot of in the rest of the series, but I think we finally got a real glimpse of who she was, her past, and I really enjoyed that in this one. And then Tiamat's Wrath was just action from start to finish. It just gave me everything I wanted in this world. This is a very vast sci-fi world. We are in space, we are in different colonies, we are at different planets. There's just so much happening in this. We have our band of characters kind of come together again in this one, and they're really fighting this like big evil, and it is just a riot. There's just so much happening in it. I just don't know what's going to happen in the next book, which is the last book, and I'm so excited but also quite trepidatious for it because I just have no idea what's going to happen. And these ones were just so great. I loved them so much. The Expanse is definitely one of my favourite series I've read in the last few years. I just loved kind of binging these books the last like year or so for Tiamat's Wrath, and it is just so great. I loved it, and if you were looking for a sci-fi series to dig your teeth into, go for The Expanse, because you have 8 books to fly through, and it's going to be finished soon as well, so yeah. Kissing the Witch by Emma Donoghue is the only short story collection I have in this list. This is one I read during the Irish Readathon, and it's one I really, really loved. Emma Donoghue is just one of those fabulous writers that seems to write about loads of different things, and every time she just does it so well. And I think that's a really great skill to have as a writer, just to be able to write about anything and just nail it. This is basically a reimagined fairy tale, set of fairy tales, where we are following the different princesses and witches and female characters from these fairy tales. And basically in the fairy tales, the way it's told is like each one is kind of linked to the next one. So we might see one about Snow White, and just for example, Snow White, and we get Snow White's story, and then we find out about her stepmother, and then the stepmother, you kind of go back in time and you see what the stepmother's story was, and so on and so forth, about all these different characters, and you have to kind of decide yourself as you're reading them who you're reading about and what fairy tale character you are reading about. And just the way it's done, these women are giving these stories, they're just so brilliant. There aren't really any princes, or there's no like romance or anything in this book, or if it is, it's very brief. It's all about the female characters, it's all about their journeys, it's all about who they are, and it's just so good. It's really, really good. Another book on this list is another one I read during the Irish Readathon. It's one no one will be surprised to see on this, because I've talked about it so much during the year. Is Mary Robinson's Everybody Matters. This is the memoir of Mary Robinson, who was the first female president of Ireland. She was also let me see, I always get this wrong, the UN High Commissioner for Human Rights in 1997. She is also now the leader of the Elders, which is a group in the UN as well, which was originally founded by Nelson Mandela. And she is just an extraordinary person. I would highly recommend anyone, if they are just into female empowerment, women in politics, or just women fighting climate change, I would read this book. She is just an extraordinary person, really, really, really inspiring, and I loved this. I loved every single part of this. Her voice is just brilliant in this. She has a dry humour that's quite funny as well. I really loved in this book as well how supportive her spouse was in this, her husband, because I find in some books you sometimes see women who are in power or have these really high jobs. Sometimes they're not supported as much at home, and in this she certainly was. She was the main breadwinner of the house for like pretty much all of her relationship, and her husband supported her every single step of the way, and I just really like seeing that, and seeing that you can have a happy marriage and also have a really high flying career. And yeah, really enjoyed it. The Poet X by Elizabeth Acevedo is written in verse and was definitely one of my favourite books of the year. I just had visceral reactions to reading this book, which I will never forget. I just was crying out. I was trying not to cry myself in different parts of this book. It is so brilliant. It is about a girl who is, her parents I think are from the Dominican Republic. I think it's Dominican Republic, or maybe Haiti. I think it's Dominican Republic. She is growing up, I believe, in New York, and she's just having a very hard time trying to figure out who she is, what she wants to do. And she's also kind of in a very tumultuous relationship with her mother, who's very religious, and is kind of trying to not shove down her religion down her daughter's throat, but her daughter is trying to figure out her Xiomara, she is trying to figure out her relationship with God and what her relationship with God means to her, and her mother isn't giving her space to figure that out, and her mother is very overbearing and not a very nice person, but a lot of that is just due to her own upbringing and her own culture and just not understanding her daughter. Yeah, there's a lot of that going on. There are just some really hard moments between mother and daughter in this, really unfair moments where you see how women are treated from very early on about their bodies, and even though it's nothing that they can actually control, just how they're treated and how people behave towards them. It's really interesting. Really, really good book. It's written in verse, but it's so powerful. One of the best books I've read this year, obviously, because it's on this list. Daisy Jones and the Six is on a lot of lists this year, and it is on mine as well. I just flew through this one, really enjoyed it. It's obviously about a band called Daisy Jones and the Six, and about the one album they made and why they broke up after it, the real story behind them, and the crazy things that were happening behind the scenes. It is written in kind of interview format, which I really enjoyed. I would love to reread this and reread it on audiobook, because I've heard the audiobook is really, really good. The ending now, looking back at it, kind of stepping away from the ending, isn't as strong as I would like it to be, but just the journey to get there and just the way you learn about the characters, and just I love the kind of the different stories you get from different characters telling the same story, because you're getting the same story from different characters, but there are just slight differences because each character obviously has their own version of events, and I just thought the way it's done is just so clever, just really clever writing. So yeah, really enjoyed this one. I have The Dark Days Pact and The Dark Days Deceit by Alison Goodman on this list, because I have read both of them this year. The first book, The Dark Days Club, I read a few years ago, but I finished the trilogy this year, and it was just brilliant. It was one of my favourite series of the year. This is set in kind of Georgian Victorian times, and we are following a girl called Helen who learns that she is able to see these demon-like creatures, and she basically has to train to be able to fight these demon-like creatures and save other humans from them. But the thing is that Lady Helen is obviously a lady. She is someone of quite high quality. Her family are not particularly, not really well off, but are quite, known in society. She's supposed to make a good marriage, and it's very hard to be learning how to fight and learning how to do all these different things when you're also supposed to be a lady and supposed to be going to your society balls and stuff like that. And Lady Helen is struggling between her two worlds and what she actually really wants to do. And just the emphasis on the time period, it seems so real in this, and I just really enjoyed it. You can see it's just so well written. There's so much detail in it. You can tell how much study Alison Goodman probably put into this book, and how much she really looked into the time period to make it as accurate as possible. There are a few characters that show up in this book that are real characters in history, which is really, really interesting. So yeah, this is just a brilliant trilogy, and I highly recommend people read it. And I know a few people have already picked it up because I have been raving about it, so that makes me really happy. I really enjoyed the Guernsey Literary and Potato Peel Pie Society by Mary Ann Shaffer and Annie Barrows this year. I always have to read that from the book because I can never remember the full name of it. This is just such a charming read. This one reminded me of a modern day Jane Austen book. It is about this literary and potato peel pie society set on the island of Guernsey, that was originally set up during World War II, and we are a few years out of World War II now. A character called Juliet who is getting letters from these people who live on this island, and she eventually becomes really, really good friends with them and goes over to visit them, and we are just finding out about just their past. There's a slight kind of romance going on in this book. The whole thing is told through letters to different people, which makes it really, really fun to read and quite a fast read. There is just something just so beautiful and charming and lovely about this. Like every single character in this book, I would love to go on a walk with them or go and have dinner with them or just be friends with them, because they are just all so lovely, and they are people that you want in your lives. And for like a brief time while I was reading this book, they were in my lives, and I just loved it. I still have not watched the movie of this book. I really, really need to, because I think it's going to be just as charming as the novel. But I really, really enjoyed this one. This is one I will definitely be rereading in the future. Becoming by Michelle Obama is also a book that I really, really enjoyed this year. I kind of knew I was going to enjoy this one, but Michelle Obama just has a particular type of voice when she is writing her story that is just so interesting. There was so much I did not know about her life and her early life with Barack Obama in this book. Again, American politics is not my strong suit. I don't know that much about it, so it was just really interesting seeing it from someone who lived that presidential life, but kind of from like the side, not in the direct spotlight, but how things that she did or her children did or anything like that could also directly affect her husband, who was the president, and how people kind of would take different things that she said and take them out of like context and stuff like that was really interesting. And yeah, I just love this one. I just thought it was really, really well written, and I loved it, and I'm recommending it to loads and loads of people. Sorcery of Torrents by Margaret Rogerson is obviously on this list because I just raved about this when I read it. This one was just such a brilliant read. It's been a long time, I feel like, since I fell into a story the way I fell into this story, and I just loved every single bit of it, from the magic in it to the books that came alive in this book, the books that had their own personalities but were also very dangerous, so you couldn't actually really have them around, but they were just so lovely and they were just so magical. They were just such a brilliant they were such a brilliant addition to this book. I think they really made it for me. The romance in this book is also very angsty and a lot of chemistry in it, which I loved. I do agree with people that some say that there was like loads of different things going on. As soon as you thought one thing was over, another thing would start, and it could get a little bit tiring, but I was just along for the ride with this book because I just loved the characters, I loved the magic, I loved the demon creatures in it. It was great, really enjoyed it. Definitely recommend people read it. Kingsbane by LeGrand is the second book in the Furyborn trilogy. The third book is out this year, I think, later on this year. I loved this book as well. This is a hefty book. This is about 600 pages. So it is one that I just really enjoyed my time with. It was just something that I just felt like I fell into the story with this one again, and it had been about a year and a half since I'd read Furyborn. I was kind of afraid I would forget some of the story. I had forgotten some of the story, but I actually ended up falling back in love with all of the characters really, really quickly. I just love the different types of characters you're seeing this. You're seeing someone who seems to be evil but also has but she's not really, and you're seeing people treat her as she's evil, but you're seeing the reasons why she's making the decisions that she's making and rooting for her despite knowing that she's going to make the wrong decisions, because you're also seeing a future timeline. You're seeing the effect of the decisions that she has made. So the characters in this, Riel and Eliana, are both bisexual as well, and I feel like that's explored really, really well in this book, and it's not like the romances that are in this book are really interesting. You're seeing things where the women are very much in control of their own kind of what they want to do, in terms of their sexual relationships as well. I feel like everything in this is just done so well. It is just a meaty book that you can just sink yourself into, and yeah, I loved it. The same with Furyborn, and the next book I think is going to be just as good. Rebecca by Daphne du Maurier was a book I read this year, and just like a lot of other people that have read this, I absolutely loved it. I loved the gothic horror of this book. I just loved the characters in this are just so rich. I thought the characters were done so well. They were developed so well. You really they're the characters in this book that you could just really, really hate with every passion of your soul. And yeah, I just love the way the narrator in this book is done so well, because you never find out her name. She's just like the second wife, and you see the way she is haunted by Rebecca, and she makes the shadow of Rebecca such a big thing in her life, where she doesn't have to make it such a big thing, and she makes it harder for herself, and you're just kind of trying to scream at her through the pages to just cop on and stop focusing on Rebecca and just enjoy her life, and she's not doing that. And I just really loved that journey with the characters and finding out what really happened to Rebecca, who Rebecca was, and the story behind Manderley, and just being able to read this really famous story at long last and just really enjoying it was just a pleasure for me as well. A Little Hatred by Jo Abercrombie is another fantasy book I have on this list, and I just really enjoyed this one because it had everything I wanted in a fantasy. It had loads of different characters with loads of different relationships with each other. You had loads of action, a bit of magic, some industrial revolution. You had like a big war and a little war, with characters that seemed like they were going to be one way and then turned out to be another way. It left me just really satisfied with the story, but also dying for the next page, like dying for the next book. Like the way this book ended, it ended on such a cliffhanger. I was just screaming at the page. I wanted the next book straight away, and I cannot wait to read the next book when it comes out, hopefully this year. I don't know, maybe next year. It's gonna be really great. It was my first Jo Abercrombie book to read, and I think I can see why now, why everyone else seems to really like him, why he's a very famous, or a very well loved fantasy author. I definitely need to pick up some more of his books. Yeah, this one just was brilliant. It had everything in a fantasy that you want. It had action, it had really complex relationships, really kind of good kind of kingdom and political system, and everything is just really well thought out and really well connected, and yeah, it was great. And then the last book I have on this is A Court of Thorns and Roses by Sarah J Maas, which is one I finally read this year and finally now see why everyone else loves it, because I absolutely adored this book. Again, just fell into the story, really easy to read. The chemistry between the characters was just sizzling in this book. Absolutely loved it. I loved the fairy kind of magic in this book, and the real dark fairies, and just the way everything was set up with all the courts in this book. I'm really intrigued to see what happens next and see what happens with all those courts. I think it's A Court of Mist and Fury. I do have it on my phone from the library, so I do need to read that soon. But yeah, this one was absolutely fantastic. I just loved it. I loved the sauciness of it. I loved the chemistry. I loved the magic. I loved the characters. It was great. There was nothing really to hate about it. So that is all 15 books that I really, really enjoyed this year. I think I managed to do it in okay time, hopefully. So yeah, please let me know if any of these books made it onto your top list this year as well. Let me know down below. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you guys again next time. Bye.